Disclaimer. Please note that this episode contains depictions of violence that some people may find disturbing. The views and opinions expressed in this episode are those of the speakers, commenters, experts, and/or hosts. They do not explicitly or necessarily reflect nor represent the channel's policy or the views held by this channel or broadcaster. The broadcaster or its channel cannot be held accountable for all or any views expressed during this program. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of The Night Crew with Drew and Katie. Today we will be talking about the 40-day nightmare with Junko, and this occurred in Japan. And to get started off, we're going to be talking about a summary as usual, the kidnapping, the torture, and the trial.
But first, we're going to talk about where we was last week. We were both working. We had a lot that was going on last week, and unfortunately we weren't able to upload because there was a lot going on, and we apologize for it, but it may or may not continue to happen throughout the rest of the time we have this podcast, because we can't always do this. We have a lot going on, and I can't reiterate that enough.
We do have other lives.
Yeah, but we do have a longer one for you guys today. And we really hope you enjoy it. We did a lot of research, and I will start you off. So, we name the story 40-Day Nightmare, and you'll get the gist of that and why it's called that in a bit. But we talk about this woman named Junko. Junko. She was born in Misato, Japan, and lived with her parents and two brothers. Now, while in high school, she worked a couple part-time jobs after school to save up money for a trip that she wanted to go on. Now, her biggest goal in life was to become a singer, right? So the four boys who kidnapped her attended the same high school and were named Joe, Shinji Minato, Yasushi Watanabe, and the ringleader was Miyano Hiroshi. Mm-hmm. Now, Joe was 17, Minato was 16, Watanabe was 17, and the ringleader, Miyano Hiroshi, was 18.
So they were all in high school. They're not even full adults yet, technically, in Japanese culture.
So they weren't even graduated either.
Nope.
Well, to go on, Hiroshi was a troubled child and involved himself in a lot of shoplifting, stealing, and damaging of school property. Now, at the time of this case, Hiroshi was living with his girlfriend, which is, at 18 years old, is pretty kind of impressive. But anyways, he was living with his girlfriend, but they broke up due to Hiroshi joining a gang and committing a bunch of sex crimes, which I can understand why they broke up.
Yeah.
But he also had connections to the Japanese mafia, the Yakuza. And his friend, Minato, had participated in crimes for the Yakuza, which is, Minato's a 16-year-old, so Hiroshi's 18, Minato's a 16-year-old. And what they did was a lot of SA, including rape, purse snatching, extortion, a lot of that kind of stuff, a lot of SA stuff. But it's unknown if Hiroshi or Minato asked Junko to date them.
So, I have a fun fact about the Yakuza. Well, it's probably not fun, but
I don't think any fun facts about the Yakuza is actually fun.
Either way, the Yakuza is still around today, and Drew and I are going to Japan next year, so I was curious.
We're going to try. We're going to try to go to Japan. I don't know how well it'll work, but hey, we'll try.
We're going to go there. Either way, the Japanese culture is very strict about dressing modestly and not showing tattoos. And I was like, well, why can't we show tattoos in Japan? And apparently the Yakuza, they usually have the tattoos, and that's why the Japanese culture really looks down upon people with tattoos nowadays.
So they relate tattoos to the Yakuza.
The mafia, yeah. Pretty much. Still.
Well, I'm sure at temples and religious places that doesn't go over well.
No, not at all. I can't show any of those there. But now we go on to the kidnapping. On November 25th, 1988, Minato and Hiroshi were walking outside when they spotted Junko riding her bike. Hiroshi told Minato to run Junko over and push her off her bike.
Wait, hold on, pause. I'm sorry to pause. Like, run her over with a car?
No, I think he meant like
Run over to her?
run into her and push her off the bike.
Okay.
Yes, that's what he meant. Either way, once Minato ran into her, she fell off her bike. Hiroshi came to the rescue and he offered to walk her home. He gained her trust and he took her to a warehouse where he threatened to kill her.
So, imagine you get knocked off on the bike that you're riding home. Some guy knocks you over. You're like, what the heck? Another guy picks you up, helps you up. Was like, hey, I'll walk you to your house. You guys are getting to know each other on the way back. He leads you to a warehouse, which isn't the way of your home, and it's like, yeah, I'm gonna kill you.
Yeah, that's how we was.
That is a roller coaster of emotions.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously her trust was broken because at the warehouse and after the warehouse, they went to a nearby hotel. He essayed her, sexually assaulted her.
And it rhymes with grapes.
Yeah. And at the hotel, after the warehouse incident, Hiroshi called Minato and his other two friends that we mentioned earlier and bragged about what he had just done to Junko.
Which is terrible. Why would you want to brag about something like that? I don't know.
I mean, these people are messed up, so...
Seems a very terrible thing to do.
So, Joe told Hiroshi to keep her there and allow them to gang grape her, but ended up releasing her. And this friend group had a history of kidnapping and assaulting another young girl. So, I mean, they were not new to this act at all.
Which is terrible to do because, again, they're 18 and 16 years old. In between, well, I say the group is 16 to 18 years old, which, as a 16-year-old, I was worried about, am I going to be good at sports? What does my hair look like in the morning?
Can I drive?
Not even that. Like, can I get my temps to drive?
Yeah, literally.
I would never thought of doing this to somebody. I would never actually thought of doing this to somebody.
Well, they were in a gang, and apparently the Yakuza is very, very bad, so, I mean, it doesn't surprise me. It's horrible how young they were.
Well, it's still terrible in general. I mean,
yeah.
Geez, I wonder what these guys' parents are like. I mean,
probably non-existent.
Yeah, I mean, geez, man.
So
you got to be some sort of monster to be doing that to girls. I don't know. That's just really messed up, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, it always will be.
But at 3 a.m., going off of, letting her go, at 3 a.m., Hiroshi took Junko to the park to meet with his 3 friends, which this was after the whole warehouse and hotel thing. They threatened that if she tried to leave or escape, they would kill her whole family, right? So after, they got done doing their stuff, they took her to Minato's house, where he lived with his parents. So originally, Minato's parents forced Junko to act like she was his girlfriend, but then soon stopped doing that. They never called the police, though, since their son was so violent to them and had ties with the Yakuza. So they forced this girl to pretty much be Minato's girlfriend, and they're also terrified of their son, who's 16 years old and apparently extremely violent.
Yeah, I mean, I think they were doing the whole girlfriend thing to make the situation look a little better on them. But even when I was researching this, it said he would physically assault his parents previously. So, I mean, they were scared of their son. Their 16-year-old son.
What is his dad not believe in, punishment, I guess? I don't know. That's confusing.
I don't know, but I mean, if they have ties with the Yakuza, they could snap their fingers and members of that gang will kill his family pretty much. So, I mean, that would scare me too. It would.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
So on November 27th, Junko's parents reported her missing. However, Hiroshi forced Junko to call her parents 3 times to convince them that she ran away and was safe. So he had this all planned out to make it seem like she was okay and she was with her friends.
Yeah, that's a mastermind right there.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Dang. So, upcoming that we're going to be talking about is the torture and murder of Junko. Now, this is kind of rated R. We're going to get into details about it, so if there are kids watching, I suggest you tell them to turn it off and not listen to this.
Yeah, this case is very similar to the Hello Kitty murder we covered 2 weeks ago, but this one is way worse, and it was 40 days, so it was longer as well. So
we're going to get into it.
It is gruesome. Yeah.
So to start off with the information about this torture and murder, the group of boys that held Junko, they kept her there for 40 days. And during those 40 days, they invited other boys and other men into the house to sexually assault her. So not only is it 4 boys, they invited how many other people to come do these terrible things to her.
Yeah.
So on November 28th, they invited 2 boys over, and they all drank cough medicine in front of Junko while acting high, which is pretty much lean, give or take. If that's pretty much what they made. But while they were doing that, Junko screamed and tried to run away, but was stopped. So hearing the screams, Minato's mother checked on the boys, and they explained that they were just messing around with her. So after leaving the room, the boys' gang raped Junko as they knocked her unconscious. So over the next 40 days, Junko was essayed daily. One time she was sexually assaulted by 12 different boys on the same day. It was about approximately, if they could, give numbers, she was raped about by 100 different men around 400 times, which is insane and terrible.
Awful.
That is.
So every single day they're doing this to her with a bunch of different boys. It's not even men, it's boys. They're all boys.
Yeah, she was there for 40 days, so that's, what, 10 a day? Jeez.
Yeah. And
Jeez, man.
The 4 original boys that we mentioned earlier shaved her pubic hair, forced her to masturbate / dance naked as they listened to music, and they beat her to the point that she could not walk anymore. They forced her to sleep outside in the balcony in the winter with barely any clothing on, and they also made her sleep in the freezer. So any kind of torture you can think of, they thought of it already.
And they had objects like metal rods, a lit match, and some bottles were inserted into her anus and vagina, which is terrible. They force-fed her large amounts of alcohol, milk, and water. Eventually, to the point, she was so injured that she couldn't keep her water down and would throw up. She often had to inhale paint thinner. They'd make her smoke several cigarettes at once and was burned on her arms and legs with lighter fluid.
And by the end of December, Junko was so malnourished since she'd been given little food and only milk, which that makes no sense to me. Why milk? Anyways, her injuries and infections were so horrible that she couldn't even walk up and down the stairs to use the restroom. So she had to stay in her room and eventually lost control of her bowels and bladder. She was forced to stay in that room. And her face was so beaten that they found her brain had shrunk and her nasal cavity was full of blood.
Imagine getting beat. I mean, I can't imagine getting beat so much that your brain shrinks, but that is terrible.
Yeah, from all the trauma and everything.
That is terrible. I can't imagine, just the stress and anxiety and all the pain that she went through, for 40 days. That's really terrible.
I'd want them to just kill me at that point. It's like, how long are you going to do this for?
Well, they'd be threatening to kill her. I can't say I would have. I can't say what I would do in that situation because I don't think I can imagine what it would feel like.
Well, yeah, I'll never
So
But the fact, I didn't even know your brain could shrink from, I mean, I guess that makes sense.
abuse.
Though,
Yeah, I didn't know that. I truly didn't know that. But eventually, this is where it's starting to look up just a tiny bit. Eventually, Junko did eventually call the police, but was caught before saying anything to them and was beaten. We're talking like beaten so terribly that she was like, please just kill me, end my suffering. I don't want to be alive anymore. But the boys, they're like, no, we're going to keep you alive and continue to do what we want to do to you. So near the 40-day mark, Junko was beaten. She was sick. She smelled of rotting flesh. All the boys lost interest due to, her being like this, being sick, being smelly. So they ended up capturing another 19-year-old woman, gang raping her, and then releasing her afterwards while Junko watched.
And on January 4th, 1989, Hiroshi lost a game of mahjong and took his anger out on Junko. Just so stupid. So, how he did this, he lit her on fire. And Junko tried to put out the fire, but eventually became unresponsive. So she's still alive at this point, she's just unconscious. And after the fact, the boys continued to beat her, forced her to drink her own urine, lighted a candle to drip hot wax onto her face, and place candles on her eyelids.
That is so... That poor girl. Oh my gosh. Being burned alive and then having to go through even more stuff? Jeez, man.
Yeah, they had no mercy at all.
I can't... 16... These kids were 16 and 18 years old, man. They could have done something good in their lives. Actually done something good for the world instead of doing something like this. But eventually, they ended up kicking the crap out of her. She ended up falling onto a stereo unit that was near her and began having convulsions, which when she fell, she probably hit something around her neck to have that happen to her. But due to this, she started bleeding and pus was squirting out of her infected burns. But despite this, the boys put plastic bags on her hands and continued to beat her. They also dropped an iron exercise ball into her stomach several times. This lasted about 2 hours before Junko sadly passed away.
The fact that they kept abusing her...
Even as she was, literally dying?
Yeah, she's dying in front of them. Her whole body is just failing itself. And they just continued, let's put plastic bags on her hands and just continue to beat her until she's dead, pretty much.
Why, why do they hate her so much? Why do they do all this to her? I'll never understand.
Well...
what is the purpose? I don't get it. Why do you have to do that to someone?
I mean, they probably joined the Yakuza when they were young. So probably all they know is violence and how
I understand that, but you have to be on a whole level of insane, psychotic, messed up in the head to do something like this to someone. You have to. I don't see how someone can think that's okay and can force themselves or enjoy doing it to other people. I'll never understand how they could do that to someone and think it's okay or it's funny or it's entertaining. How do you not feel bad for the victim? You know what I mean? I'll never understand. I'll never get it.
Like I said, they were probably raised to just not give a shit about anyone and just to take advantage of women. That's what it sounds like, really. And Minato's parents are horrible people. I mean, they did nothing. Even if
they're
parents,
just as guilty. They're just as guilty.
If I were the parents, I'd be like, you know what? If I die, I die, but I'm not letting this little girl die.
This girl,
No.
Ridiculous. They're just as guilty. They should get the same prison sentence because they knew exactly what was going on. Oh, we're afraid we're gonna die. Dude, you're letting a innocent girl get tortured in your basement and you've done nothing about
your
it.
son.
You know what they're doing. You can't tell me that they had no idea what was going on. I call bull.
They could have at least fought back, I think, against these little boys. Like,
I mean,
they could have figured something out.
His dad is a grown man. He should be able to take out at least 2 of them.
I know, but they didn't because they were too scared that they were going to die.
But unfortunately, after she passed, all those boys, they wrapped her body in blankets and they ended up putting her into a travel bag, which is sad. And then once in there, they placed her body into a 55-gallon drum and filled it with cement. And then at 8 p.m. at night, they loaded it up and disposed of it in a cement truck in Tokyo. The messed up part is that while Junko was still alive, she regretted not watching the last episode of her favorite show. So Hiroshi found the episode and placed it in the travel bag. He did this because he didn't want her to return as a ghost that would haunt him. So he knew exactly what he was doing enough to put something in there to cover his own ass.
Yeah, he didn't feel sorry for killing her. He was just like, oh, I don't want you to come back and haunt me. There's just no way that's going to happen. They had no empathy. They did not care what was going to happen to them. Which, I mean, we're about to talk about the trial, but either way, the trial is so ridiculous. The sentences they got. It's not fair, but then again, Japan is a totally different country.
Different country, different
time period, everything.
Everything's different.
So, on January 23rd, 1989, Joe and Hiroshi were arrested for the gang rape of a 19-year-old they had kidnapped the previous moment. So they weren't arrested for the murder initially. The police had no idea about the murder. It was for this 19-year-old girl. So on March 29th, 2 officers questioned them and found women's underwear at their houses. During the questioning, Hiroshi assumed the officers were aware of Junko's murder and that Joe confessed. So he told the officers where they would find her body, which left the officers very confused because, like I said, they're there for
a different
this
woman,
other case, this different woman.
Junko.
Yeah, they had no idea about this, but that's a good thing because they got caught.
And they were trying to solve a unsolved murder about a woman and her 7-year-old son, not Junko, so they weren't even there for Junko. But the police ended up finding Junko's body and identified her by her fingerprints.
And on April 1st, 1989, Joe was arrested for another essay in Junko's murder. The rest of the others soon followed, including a few other boys whose DNA was found on and inside of Junko. So the original 4 boys were convicted of committing bodily injury that resulted in death instead of murder. Which...
That's murder. That's murder no matter how you spin it, but
I don't know.
I think they didn't sentence them that much because they were, still kids, 16, 17, 18. But,
I don't give a shit.
Hold on. But my thing is, they still killed someone because of what they did to them. So why are they treating them like they're kids, like they didn't know what they were doing? They knew exactly what they were doing.
Bodily injury is like breaking an arm, not putting her in cement and leaving her there in a travel bag.
I don't know, lighting her on fire.
Or anything that happened to her, yeah. It's ridiculous. So, Hiroshi was sentenced to 20 years in prison, Minato 5 to 9 years, Joe 8 years in juvenile detention, and Watanabe to 5 to 7 years.
That was our dog.
So Hiroshi got the longest sentence, while the others really just got a slap on the wrist, unfortunately.
But after being released, after all this time, 3 out of the 4 boys committed more crimes as soon as they got out and hurt more people. So in July 2004, mind you, this whole murder happened in 1989. This is in July 2004. Joe was arrested for assaulting a man and threatening to kill him. He was sentenced to 7 years and has been released. His mother vandalized Junko's grave due to blaming Junko for her son's miserable life, which is really messed up and very disrespectful. Now, Hiroshi was arrested again for fraud, and Minato was arrested for attempted murder since he attacked a man and tried to slash his throat open.
Yeah, so as soon as they served these sentences, they got out and they just committed more crime. Prison did nothing for them.
Clearly didn't learn their lesson the first time.
No.
And I'm sure they're not the most intelligent beings.
No. They aren't.
Due to all the stuff that they did. So.
No. And I mean, they were juveniles, so they still murdered an innocent girl, though. But either way.
Who did nothing to them. Didn't know them. You did nothing to them.
Yeah. But a little background on the trial, how that occurred since they were juveniles. When the trial began, the 4 boys were documented as A, B, C, and D due to them being so young, minors. In 1989, anyone under the age of 20 was considered a minor in Japan. But then in 2000, the age of conviction for a juvenile went from age 16 to 14. And then most recently in 2022, the legal age of adulthood changed from 20 to 18 finally in 2022. So essentially in that time period, the death penalty would be considered for minors in heinous cases. Don't know why they said this one wasn't as bad, but either way, Junko's mother was really angry about these sentences, so she won a lawsuit against Minato's parents and was rewarded $425,000 once they sold their home.
I mean, that's not even worth it. I mean, to have your kid go through all that stuff, I'd be going after everything they had. I would want everything from them. I would take them all. And honestly, for my personal opinion, if that was my daughter, I would have done a lot more than suing.
Literally, especially the way they tortured her. It's so ridiculous.
Yeah, I would have done a lot worse.
I mean, Junko had such a great life ahead of her. I mean, within researching, they said she was really smart, she had good grades, she had a lot of friends, she wanted to be a singer. Her life was looking out for her, and her parents loved her. But then she rejected one of these boys, and they got all butthurt, and that's what led to this whole thing.
Just insane.
Because they're petty.
Oh, so their version of, oh, you don't like me? Okay, well then I'm gonna take what I want anyways. Like,
yeah, that's pretty much what they did.
Did nothing. I'm sure she was extremely nice. I'm sure she was I bet you she was a good person that didn't deserve any of this stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, the reason we chose the Hello Kitty murder in this 40-day nightmare scenario is because Japan is looked upon as being very modest. It's one of the most safest countries in the world.
Well, it is now.
It is
now. It's a lot different with the times, but back then, what they did in World War II, and back, they have a history of bad doings, I guess you could call it. But they are vastly different now. It is nothing like it was.
Not at all.
But the times change and things get changed over time, so it's a lot different than what it was back then.
Well, it definitely is.
From this case, we're almost 34 years from the case itself.
Yeah.
I mean, that's 30-something years, Katie. It's a lot different when it was back then than it is now.
Well, yeah, I wonder what they did to increase the safety and protection of their people. Because, like I said,
I'm sure there's a lot more cops going around, and it's a lot safer because people have manners and realize all that stuff really isn't worth it. And of course, you still have the people who are part of gangs and do stuff like that, but those people will never change. They'll never understand what they've done wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
they have to realize themselves what they're doing is wrong. Until then, they'll keep doing what they're doing.
Yeah, but I'm really curious about the Yakuza and their history. I really didn't look into that much because this is more about Junko and remembering her. But either way, it's just insane what the mafia can do to people, how violent they can be.
It wasn't okay. They were a part of a mafia, yes, but it wasn't the Yakuza that was doing it. It was these four boys
yeah.
because they got their egos hurt and they decide to do this stuff to a poor young woman who didn't deserve any of it. You're just not in the right mind, like the right headset, or you're just a psycho. You're a killer.
They
You have a messed up mind to be doing something like this to someone, or them not dating you. I think it's crazy. I think it's ridiculous.
I mean, they probably just wanted to gain more power within the Yakuza by doing this horrible thing.
Yeah, that's such a good way to show power, that you can do something like that to a poor woman who did nothing to you, and you do all that stuff. Oh, that makes you such a man. Oh, it's ridiculous. I'll never understand people who do that stuff.
Well, it's like our first podcast, how we talked about how the 3 men beheaded the 2 women, all for the Islamic State.
Yeah.
That's like the same thing, but it's for religion.
Mm-hmm.
But the ISIS didn't even claim them as theirs because they're just wanting power. They want attention.
It's attention, I think.
It's definitely attention.
It's attention, and it's also like, oh, I'm the biggest in the room. Don't, mess with me. But yet again, you're a terrible human being. An absolute terrible human being.
Yeah, it's that power and control aspect that they crave the most. That's why they keep committing crime. I hope these 4 boys have died since then, but I'm not sure if they have. I mean, it's horrible what they did.
It is, yeah.
I don't even know how you could think of half that stuff to do to her. It's just disgusting.
I don't think I could, even if someone forced me to, I don't think I could do it. I truly don't. I don't think I could do it.
No. And Junko's poor parents, I mean, imagine finding out in this trial everything they did to her.
Hold on. Imagine just your kid goes on a bike ride, you never see her again, you don't know why for almost 2.5 months. And then one day it's like, and one day it's like, oh, we found your daughter. She's in a cement barrel at the bottom of a freaking ocean or a river, and we're doing investigation on her. She's dead.
I can't even.
Because of these 4 boys who thought they're big and bad, but whatever, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's a messed up case, and I have been focusing on different countries lately, so we're probably going to narrow it back in on America here soon. More like unsolved crimes, supernatural stuff, serial killers, maybe eventually. Those are really common.
Yeah, most people know about all the serial killer stories. But we're going to dig deep and try to figure out stuff that isn't
well known.
Serial killers that are not well known, modern serial killers, and crazy stories about, supernatural, weird sightings. That's what we might be starting to lean into at some point. But we thank you guys for your support. I know we missed last week, and we're going to keep trying to do it weekly.
Well, we're back and better than ever, and please let us know what cases you want us to go over or to cover, to research, anything.
Leave a like, drop a comment, subscribe, hit the follow button, follow us, on all of our social medias, TikToks, YouTube.
Listen to all our episodes.
Yeah. Any support would be great. It would be great.
But either way, we will see you all next week on The Night Crew.
Sleep tight. So, if you enjoyed today's podcast, please follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at The Night Crew. That is capital T, and then H-E, capital N-I-T-E, capital K-R-E-W. That is The Night Crew. thank you guys. We really appreciate all of your help and all of your support. And we will see you next week. Thank you. And